I like the dog. It's friendly.
Well, hello, and welcome back to my channel Box Office Poison. If you're new here, my name is Moxie McMurder, and today I want to talk about the Wolves of Willoughby Chase. Yes, it's that time of year again, folks. There may be no snow falling silently upon the ground, but winter is most definitely here. And listen, I love snow. I genuinely find it magical, but here in the southeast of England, we don't really get a lot of snow these days. And so when Christmas is approaching, I need snow in my movies. And one of my childhood favourites is The Wolves of Willoughby Chase. It's covered in snow, and thus here we are. I'm going to take a moment to point out that if my audio is whack, it's because I'm not recording in my usual place. And I've also got a little bit of a tickly throat. Now, this is a kids' film from the 80s, and it is the definition of mild peril, but it has such a charm to it, and it brings me that cosy sense of childhood nostalgia. This film ticked a lot of boxes for me as a kid, and quite frankly, it still does. Snow, check. Wolves, or an approximation of wolves, check. A feisty girl character, check. Richard O'Brien, check. What's not to love? Based on a book by Joan Aitken, The Wolves of Willoughby Chase was published in 1962, and I actually read it for the first time just before making this video. The book and the film are set in the early 19th century, although it is an alternate 19th century, which I believe comes into play in some of the later books. But this book tells the story of Bonnie and Sylvia. They're cousins, around about 12 years old, give or take, and they've never met. Bonnie was born and raised at the titular Willoughby Chase, a huge country manor with sprawling acres of land. Oh, and there are wolves there. Wolves that have learned to attack people getting off the local trains, wolves that chase carriages and will use any opportunity for an attack. The only person who isn't scared of these wolves is Simon, a wild boy who lives in a cave in the woods that surround Willoughby Chase. He's known Bonnie since childhood, they're a few years apart, and he makes his money selling eggs and ducks to the locals. Bonnie has been raised with wealth and privilege, whereas her cousin Sylvia has had a very different upbringing. Sylvia, whose parents are dead, has been raised by elderly Aunt Jane in London. Aunt Jane is Sir Willoughby's sister, but is not in the slightest bit wealthy. Sylvia has had to struggle, but was raised well by Aunt Jane, and she's so young she doesn't really understand just how poor they actually are. But things are now so bad that Aunt Jane has no choice but to send her beloved Sylvia away to Willoughby Chase. Sylvia travels by train and meets Mr. Grimshaw, played by Mel Smith.
Merry Christmas, Melvin.
As the train pulls into the station nearest to Willoughby Chase, Mr. Grimshaw is knocked unconscious by falling luggage, and it's decided, in their haste to avoid the wolves, to bring Mr. Grimshaw back to Willoughby Chase to recover. Meanwhile, Bonnie's parents leave on a restorative trip abroad due to Lady Willoughby's poor health, and they leave Bonnie and Sylvia in the care of a governess, the sinister spinster, Miss Letitia Slycarp, a distant relation. In the film, this character is played by Stephanie Beacham, and she is fabulous. It is so over the top and campy. I love her performance so much. She's a perfect, cruel and stylish villain. Once the Willoughbys have left, Miss Slycarp fires almost the entire staff. Bonnie, of course, is furious, but there's little she can do. Something I really like about the characterization of Bonnie and Sylvia is that these girls subvert the typical character tropes that you might expect. You might expect Bonnie, who's been raised in a position of wealth and privilege, to be the more inexperienced, refined, and more fearful of change, and that her city mouse cousin Sylvia would be more confident and worldly wise. But this is not the case. Bonnie, while perhaps spoiled, has a really feisty character and isn't afraid to get her hands dirty, whereas Sylvia is polite and timid and hates the idea of getting dirty. Bonnie and Sylvia are already suspicious of Miss Slycarp, but then after finding a secret tunnel, they discover Mr. Grimshaw, who knew Miss Slycarp before he arrived and has been faking his injury and amnesia, are plotting to change Sir Willoughby's will so that he leaves everything to Miss Slycarp. Bonnie and Sylvia are confused as to why they would want to change the will, but when word arrives that the Willoughby's ship has sunk and Bonnie is now an orphan, things become much clearer. With no time to mourn, the two girls are packed up and sent off to Blastburn, a local industrial town with an orphanage run by Miss Slycarp's friend, Gertrude Brisket. The girls are forced to work with dangerous machinery in a laundry attached to the orphanage, and after a young boy dies, Bonnie challenges Mrs. Brisket about the conditions in the laundry. This results in Bonnie and Sylvia being locked in the coal cellar. Miss Slycarp, who had been on her way to visit the girls, arrives in time to see that Simon has found where the girls are and is helping to rescue them. They fight briefly, and the girls manage to get away. But Miss Slycarp follows them back towards the house, and after some mad dashes through the snow on the most steampunk mini train, sleigh, I've got to be honest, I still don't know what this contraption is, but it's pretty cool. There's a big chase sequence involving this whatchamacallit, and due to the snow and the wolves, it ends up crashing in a fireball. Bonnie and Sylvia get back to the house thinking they're safe, but Miss Slycarp escaped the fiery crash and now confronts the girls. They fight back, and Miss Slycarp, once again set on fire, runs out into the snow. But the wolves are out there, waiting, and she meets her grisly end. Bonnie's parents turn up right at the end of the film, having survived the shipwreck, and weeks spent on a tropical island seem to have cured Bonnie's mother of her sickness. And they all live happily ever after. As I said, I read the book before making this video, and I was really hoping to fall in love with the book like I had with the film as a kid, but sadly, that didn't happen. The book is fine. Maybe I would have enjoyed it more if I'd read it as a kid. You know, that is the target audience after all. But as an adult, there wasn't really a lot for me to sink my teeth into. But it was fine. Honestly, my biggest criticism of the book is the dialogue. While it might be somewhat accurate to the time period, it is distracting, and in particular the dialogue between Bonnie and Sylvia becomes cloying very quickly. The Wolves of Willoughby Chase may not be considered a masterpiece, but for me, it's a little bit of a gem, and maybe it's just my nostalgia speaking, but I still love it. If films like The Secret Garden and Return to Oz are your cup of tea, then this might be for you. It's not as dark as Return to Oz, it's maybe not as magical as The Secret Garden, but like I said, there's something about it that just has stayed with me throughout the years. It is up on YouTube to watch, although it's not great quality. That said, I have this film on DVD, and the quality on that is pretty shocking too. So let me know, have you read the book? Have you seen the film? I've never actually met anyone in real life who grew up with this film, so I'd be interested to know if I'm totally alone here, or if other people have fond memories of it too. I'd also like to say a quick thank you to my patrons and supporters over on Ko-Fi: Veronica, John, Sinead, and Paul. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for supporting the channel this year. It really has meant a whole lot to me. And to everybody who's watched my channel this year and helped it to grow, I appreciate every last one of you. Happy holidays, and...
Merry Christmas, bitches!